Can I help you?
Do you know who I am?
Should I?
You're Davis Green.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Alexis Green. And we're cousins.
You have a brother?
No, I don't. Not anymore.
You want to tell me where we're going?
Nope.
Hint maybe?
Davis Green, this is Amanda Green, and this is Annie Green.
What about your dad?
Let's just say you're my boyfriend.
He sent you here to spy on me?
Promise me something else.
What?
That if you do leave now, it's not because you're afraid of what's going on.
I'm not afraid of what's going on.
Not with her dads, with us. No?
Buenas noches a todos. I think you probably get this a lot, but where did this story come from? Like, how did you create it? Like, the idea, the thought, and how did it connect to you?
It's been pretty well documented at this point. I was very private about it at first, but this film came out in theaters in 2016, so it's been alive, and then in 2017 it came out on Netflix, and then iTunes, and now it's on Amazon Prime this year, so people have seen it. It's been around, so I'm able, I talk about it a little bit during press, obviously, when it came out, but it's been so long. But it's based very, very, very closely on something that happened to me in my life that I took and kind of mutated into something fictional about halfway through. My family is kind of fragmented because my father has a brother who he never spoke to for 30 years, and I found out that very late in my life. And so I have all these cousins that I didn't know existed, and then one day one of them contacted me on Facebook, and she had my last name, and she looked a little bit like me, and we met up in secret. I didn't tell anyone in my I told my brother. I think he was he kept the secret, but I met her up in a bar with her in New York. I flew to New York without telling anyone, and because she said, "I'm your cousin," and I didn't believe her, but I started looking around and I started figuring out that maybe she is my cousin. And so we met up, and I had the weirdest night of my life where I was having fun and really excited and also really sad at the same time. It was like meeting someone who you feel like you've known forever because you share DNA, but it feels like you never met them, but you feel like you've known them forever. You feel like I was robbed of a friend or a sister or something. And I found myself oddly attracted to her too. I was confusing at the time, I think, physical attraction for the emotional response that was going on in my head. And my parents are both psychologists, so I tend to psychoanalyze myself a lot. I do things and then I think all about them for they say if you have psychologists for parents, you become a writer and a patient, which, because you have to. So I do things and I spend 3 weeks analyzing them. But basically, I decided that I was attracted to her because I was so upset and excited about having this new person in my life, but that I never got to meet. And I was confusing, it was going through all the motions of becoming flirtatious and falling in love with someone, except it was more just the excitement. So we were shooting pool at a bar, and every time her elbow rubbed up against mine, I got that little when you have a crush on somebody, I was oh my God, wow, she's, and when she smiled at me, I got oh my God, And I started playing with this idea with my best friend, who was the one who forced me to go out and meet her in New York. She was my best friend from like LA, and she's a filmmaker as well. And she's like, Justin, you have to go to New York and meet this girl. And I did. And then I come back and she's like, I don't care what you're writing. We are writing this right now. And so we threw out what we were working on, and we basically spent the next half of a year to a year writing a script together that got really personal for me. So she was there to help me shape it into fiction. So up until a certain point, everything you saw happened. And then we kind of said, well, what if I went further? And what if it went further? And what if I figured out what was going on with my family and why my dad and my uncle don't speak? And we just followed it through to kind of like the archetype of like a Greek tragedy, you know, or Romeo and Juliet or something like that, but in the same family, like an incest Romeo and Juliet. If for my bisociation students, I took incest and combined it with Romeo and Juliet. But yeah, I took the archetypes of like the Greek tragedy or the Shakespearean tragedy, right, and put it into a normal present day setting where cousins really aren't supposed to be together, but in the olden days you could, and on Game of Thrones and stuff, right? But I thought it was more about desire, and it was more about this part of you that's, you know, that's his DNA, that's his family. She's always going to be in his head, no matter what. And it's just about those pieces of you that are that you desire that you can't have. And I thought that's something that's universal, even though it's my cousin, right? And I desired her. I think we all walk around each day living with these things that we want that we know are taboo in society, in civilization, that maybe many years ago in the wilderness were not taboo. And I just found that really exciting as an idea for a movie, because it was something that I'm really interested in as a person, but then it was also getting to relive and examine something from my life. And like I tell all my students, movies are for the things you can't do in your real life. They're to explore your fears and your desires, right? And sometimes you fear the thing you desire. And so, and I definitely desired my cousin, and I feared desiring her. Yeah. So I thought this was a safe place to discuss, to examine and explore all of the taboo things that I think about without actually having to do them in my real life. Like, instead of doing it, instead of going and sleeping with my cousin, I got to go make a film about it. So now I don't feel like I have to sleep with my cousin. So everybody wins. Especially you, who get to watch all the f***ed up things in my head. I hope some of it was fun and uncomfortable. I hope it was uncomfortable.
It was.
Good. Sometimes films it's okay for that. Sometimes it's okay.
So my next question is more as a filmmaker. We usually tend to write about things, and as much as we go like, we're going to make up a story and it's not going to become personal, it becomes personal. Somehow, like, you starting, like, you always put yourself into your work, right? Mm-hmm. So my question is, when you were making it, was it like odd, or how do you handle it? I mean, there must be some specific scenes that probably like triggered you.
Got me kind of emotional?
Yeah.
Well, look, personal doesn't mean autobiographical. I truly believe that if it's something that you think about every day or it means a lot to you, it's personal film, right? And I think it's impossible to make something well unless you care about it. Autobiographical is double personal because you care about it and it's your life, right? But the scenes that are fiction in this that didn't happen are as personal as the ones that happened to me, because I'm going through them in my mind and I'm wrestling with how I feel about them. But yeah, it's hard. But you know what? Making films very quickly for very little amount of money is also very hard, and it takes away the emotional because you're just so stressed out about getting the shot or getting the scene. But yeah, you put yourself there. I mean, my costume designer stalked me on Facebook to dress him. So like, I'm looking at Joe's clothing, and I wear it all now. Maybe this might be his, like, from the movie. I like wear all of his clothes from the movie because it's my style, because like they were creating a version of me, the Boston stuff, and you know, it's like that's you put yourself into everything. This was the first time I put me literally into a movie. But my first feature film, Girlfriend, which screened here last time I was here, is about a young man with Down syndrome who's just going to try to take care of a girl no matter what she does back. She might never love him back, but he's going to keep taking care of her and loving her. And that's me too, Like, and I connected with that more than this film, where I was feeling triggered emotionally watching him get rejected by the girl over and over and over again. And even though he's getting rejected, Evan, you can see the Freudian slip there, Evan kept loving her. And that is my life. Like, I got rejected by girl after girl after girl after girl. I know it's a big shock, but that used to happen all the time. But I felt for him because I've been in that situation where I've given everything to someone who never gave it back. And so it's impossible to make something honestly unless you are really invested. You don't need to have lived it autobiographically, but I feel like you do need to put yourself in their shoes. And it was easy with this character. It was easy with Evan. I've been lucky that the projects that I've decided to do have been things that I care deeply about. But I learned something the hard way. I've tried to make projects where I don't connect, and they don't ever turn out well because I'm not giving everything. I've directed for hire. I've written for hire. And while I'm proud of the things I've done, they don't feel like as good. And it's a talent that I don't have, and I think a lot of people do, but I'm just really bad at directing anything that I'm not personally connected to, and it's probably to my own detriment, at least financially, I guess.
Yes. This year we have a class with a Chilean professor. Her name was Loreto. And she told us that we usually, when you write, you tend to have like this subject, like this thread that follows all of your stories. What is your thread?
Wow, that's an interesting quote. The quote that I like is that Ingmar Bergman said that a director spends his entire career making different versions of the same film or telling different versions of the same story. And Akira Kurosawa said that every director has a question that they they're interested in the world. And each movie they make is a different way to ask that question. I've always been asked this, at least with the films that I've made. I'm really interested in, if I boil it down to its essence, it's bad people who do good things and good people who do bad things. I'm really interested in a morality that is shifting in characters, and what we think is good and bad is not what maybe other people do. And I'm interested in stories in which I can take the audience with you all the way through a story, and I'm gonna make you fall in love with them, and then they're gonna do something terrible, and it's gonna push back to you, and you're gonna have to decide whether you wanna keep going or not. But hopefully you're along the ride long enough where you're already in, and you already like them, and now you have to do some work, and that's what causes discomfort, is we go to movies a lot of times to escape, right? We go to movies to put ourselves in someone's shoes and be Brad Pitt or be whoever, Scarlett Johansson, or be the person in the Avengers beating everyone up because we want to escape our body, right? Ourself. So we immediately align ourselves with these great heroes that are perfect. And we don't have any obligation to do any work, because if they're great and perfect, then we can just be them for 2 hours. I'm interested in making you align yourself with somebody morally and then having them do something bad or terrible or maybe something you wouldn't have done. And then what it does is it takes the audience from being passive to being active, and you actually have to do some work, and you have to actually think about yourself and walk around with it later and decide how you feel. I'm not interested in making things that you can escape. I want you to maybe escape out of your exact situation, but then jump into another situation where you have to actually wake up and think, oh, do I like this, or am I gonna leave? And I've had people leave my films, and I wear it like a badge of honor, because it means that it's made them uncomfortable to the point where the material has changed something in them. And I'm just looking to do that. I'm looking to tell a story that the only bad response is, for me, is if they are indifferent. Yeah. Indifferent. I love, of course, someone falling in love with the movie or absolutely feeling disgusted or uncomfortable to the point where they can't, because it means that it's doing something to them, and the story I'm telling is connecting in some way. And whatever the reaction is correct, because they're having it. and I don't care what it is as long as it is a reaction. So I mean, it's a long way to answer, but I am really looking to make the audience change and look at themselves morally in a new way.